Alright, so today we're going to look at the different versions of the Beastmaster on disc in the US, and specifically comparing them to the Vinegar Syndrome Ultra release of the Beastmaster in 4K. Now this is a video I intended to get out quite a lot earlier in the year, but I came down with a bit of the Rona, so what are you gonna do? This is not going to be a review of the Beastmaster the film. I've already done that. You can go watch this video up here if you want to see that, or when we did the sequel over here. Alright, in a very brief history of the Beastmaster on disc in the US, the very first release was in 2001, pretty much at the dawn of the DVD format. It came from Anchor Bay, which back in the 2000s was our Scream factory, and then a little over 3 years later they released a special DivMax edition of the Beastmaster. That's right, there was an upgrade already in 3 years. That release came out in 2005, and there wasn't another legitimate release of the Beastmaster until Vinegar Syndrome released it in 2020, about 16 years later. Now, there was, in 2011, a Korean bootleg that showed up everywhere. This was available for in the $4 to $6 range. It still is, I think, and has been the main way people have been watching the Beastmaster for the last decade. This is a clone of the original Anchor Bay release. The only difference here is there's a little Korean on the front and the back, and one particular special feature which I will bring up when the time is right. Now, of course, the big question is, why hasn't there already been a Blu-ray release of the Beastmaster until now? Well, that is because the original camera negative for the Beastmaster has been lost, and most likely destroyed at this point. There is a website where you can follow the search at whereisthebeastmaster.com. But I know what you're thinking. Hey, don't you have a 4K Blu-ray release of it right there in your hand? Well, yes, I do. So even though they weren't able to find the original camera negative, what they were able to find was the intra-positive of the movie, and they've used that as a remaster to create the 4K disc and the Blu-ray. What is an intra-positive, you might ask? Well, I didn't know either. Essentially, if I'm reading stuff correctly, an intra-positive is made from the negative. Of course, you know, there's the film negative where everything is in negative space. I hope I can do that effect, or else I'll look like an idiot. Basically, this is what it would look like raw from the camera, and the intrapositive is the very first generation of colorization, or polar flipping of that negative. Now, this is before it gets color corrected and effects get added and all of that stuff. And they use this plus the correction to make like the master films that they send to the theaters to play. And of course, the next big question is, should I pony up the money to buy this release from Vinegar Syndrome? And this is the very first release from Vinegar Syndrome's Ultra line, limited to just 10,000 copies, and depending on when this video comes out, there's about only 5% left. That's right, there's about 5% of the copies left on their site. And then of course there is their big halfway to Black Friday sale just around the corner. So this is not going to make it past the halfway to Black Friday sale. I can guarantee that this is going to sell out. If you want it, you need to get it at the sale, at like the very start of the sale. And alright, without further ado, let's get into the comparison. The very first thing I always look at when I'm comparing discs is the special features. I mean, really, that's the main thing that separates us from the animals, the streamers. So let's go full screen black. Let's put our movies up on the left. And I'm going to go oldest special feature to new. First one up is the 2001 audio commentary that is available on all releases. Next up is the Super 8 home movies that is only available on the original Anchor Bay DVD and the new Vinegar Syndrome release. Next up is still galleries available on all releases. On the DivMax release, you have to click through it and there's no background music, unlike the original DVD and the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray. Next up, cast and crew bibliographies on both DVD sets, not on the new Vinegar Syndrome release. Oh, and in Korean on this one. Then of course the theatrical trailer on all releases. Next up is the THX Optimizer, only available on the original Anchor Bay release. Not sure, is that even a feature anymore? Is anybody gonna be tuning their TV with the original 2001 release of the Beastmaster? Let me know down in the comments. Now, everybody's favorite special feature on all of the releases is, of course, the Tanya Roberts outtakes. That is available on every release here in the US. It was an Easter egg on the first two DVDs. It is a legitimate line item on the Blu-ray. And, of course, that puts the Vinegar Syndrome now ahead of some of the foreign Blu-rays, which did not have this at all. Next is the 2005 retrospective documentary that is on the original DivMax release and the new Vinegar Syndrome release. And then the screenplay, which is only available as DVD-ROM content on the DivMax release. Now we're going to get into the new stuff available exclusively on the Vinegar Syndrome release. There is a brand new 2020 audio commentary, a brand new 2020 retrospective documentary, and a brand new version of the film. The updated effects version of the film, or the Star Wars-ing of the Beastmaster. Now, it should be noted that the only special features available on the 4K disc are the audio commentaries. So if you're going to want to watch the 4K version and then watch some special features, you are going to be changing discs. And I really hate doing that. I know I've complained about that on every single Vinegar Syndrome release, but man, it just bugs me. Come on, Vinegar Syndrome, you can do it! So, pretty comprehensive set of special features on the new Vinegar Syndrome release. The only thing you're missing is the screenplay, the THX optimizer, and those early DVD cast and crew bibliographies. You know, and perhaps those really cool animated menus from the DivMax release. So 3 main new special features. One of them is the new audio commentary. It has the same participants from the 2001 audio commentary and a moderator. Now, maybe it's just me, but I did find the moderator to be a little annoying. He's got kind of a fast-talking, over-talking YouTube thing going, and he doesn't really mesh well with the more laid-back director and producer of the film. He frequently talks over them, frequently talks about his work, which, you know, we're not watching the audio commentary on your movie, we're watching the audio commentary on the Beastmaster.
It was indicative of your time shooting the film and also the production as well, and also the post-production.
My head was spinning throughout. Pull it out and put it into tubes, you know, other jars.
Yeah, the stuff that you like break off and shake at the emergency stuff.
That's what it was. It's by itself.
So, and back then we didn't have to worry about toxic chemicals.
Yes. The actors were just fine.
Those, you know, 20 years later, those actors can't talk, of course, you know, but they're fine. But
you know, it was after a day, and you know, blood would come out,
and all the soot and everything, kind of like living in the valley right now.
Now, he does simmer down about halfway through the movie and gets a lot more bearable, but I think I'm going to give the edge to the original 2001 audio commentary track on that. The next new feature is the new retrospective, and it is pretty comprehensive. Do expect to hear a lot of the stuff you've already heard in the previous audio commentaries and documentary, but it's very polished, very nicely put together. I will say, though, that seeing the old Tanya and Mark kind of makes you question your own mortality and get really introspective and existential. So I'm going to give the nod to the 2005 version. In the 2005 version, everybody still looks pretty good. 15 years later, they've been a little rough on some of the cast and crew, as they have on all of us. One of the interesting things I liked doing, though, was seeing people's opinion change over time. Like, there's this part in the original 2005 documentary where Mark is talking about how he went on this spiritual journey with the bird. And then here in the 2020 documentary, he's like, that bird hated me.
The eagle did something one day that was extraordinary. I was standing with this enormous wedge-tailed eagle on my arm, and she said, I'll show you something. And she, in an instant, drew me into her eye until I was literally taken from this reality and suspended in the universe that she saw. She gave me a great gift. She actually didn't like me.
And of course, the last special feature is the updated FX version. Now, they don't go too crazy, don't expect CGI do-backs or anything. They just lightly touch up some of the effects. It's not distracting in any way. The effects they do use seem very time-appropriate. I watched this version on my most recent watch-through, and you know, I didn't hate it. I probably still enjoy the bad effects from the original, and that's probably the one I'm going to watch in the future, but it didn't strike me as sacrilege. Next up, video quality. I was halfway expecting this to really not be that good at all, especially considering they couldn't find the original negatives, but, you know, they did an amazing job cleaning this up. I thought it looked great, all the details pop, but I do have one nitpick about the 4K version of this movie, and there's something that HDR does to 4K that really just darkens everything. So, like, if you watch the Beastmaster in 4K, the whole movie is just darker, like 10% darker. You know, to the point where it blacks things out sometimes. I don't have video to show you of that. All of the video you're seeing right now is from the Blu-ray. Now, this is not a mark against Vinegar Syndrome. I've noticed this in other releases that have been released in 4K HDR. Most notably, recently, the Dawn of the Dead 4K release had this same issue, where it just seemed a little too dark for me. And as such, in the future, I'm probably only going to be spinning the Blu-ray version of this movie. Now, again, I love 4K. New movies in 4K look amazing, but over darkening old movies, not something I really like about 4K. Additionally, one thing to note about audio is there's only a 5.1 surround soundtrack on the new release from Vinegar Syndrome, while the older DVD releases both had a 6.1 theater surround sound. I don't think I would be able to tell the difference, but I'm sure some of you out there probably could. So here we are, should you get it? I mean, if you really like the case, and I mean, this is an over-the-top beautiful thing here. It's got a magnet lock, it's got a nice booklet in here, and it's got one of these. It has one of these things. How many movies have one of these? This is just fancy right here. I'm gonna take the Blu-ray out. If you think that this right here is worth the extra money, absolutely do it. It is an extremely nice example of boutique Blu-ray. Now, we are probably going to get more releases of the Beastmaster from Vinegar Syndrome. They're not going to be nearly as nice as their Ultra edition, but if you want to save a few dollars, they're probably coming. As you can tell on their site, they're very specific that the boxed edition is 10,000 units, and it's not like the archive editions where they say it's this many units and they'll never release them again. So I'm really expecting another edition of this by next Black Friday. And you know, probably they'll do a slipcover with that one. It'll be the special edition, and then you'll have the disc only, and that'll be the standard edition. So again, the last few of these is going to be going on sale during their halfway to Black Friday sale coming up here at the end of May. Do expect additional editions of this in the future at a lower price point. Most likely it's going to keep the same price point as Tammy and the T-Rex. You know, expect a $50 MSRP 4K version that'll go on sale for $25, and maybe a Blu-ray only version that has a $35 MSRP that'll go on sale for $17.50 eventually. Maybe in a year, maybe 2 or 3 years. So it's up to you if you want to wait. You know, there's always the chance that they pull an Arrow or a Scream Factory on us and take some of the special features away for like the standard edition versions in the future. Maybe you don't get the second Blu-ray disc. That's possible. That's not really been Vinegar Syndrome's MO over the years. They've usually been a really stand-up company. They have, up until this point, have only had the cases kind of go out of print, and the standard editions had everything on them that the special editions did. Just they don't have the nice slipcover or fancy box set. Anyway, I hope that's been informative to you and helped you decide whether or not you want to pick this up on the next halfway to Black Friday sale. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and have a great day.